Ichthyologist Lost for Thomas M. I remember your teeth, white and straight and large, your thick eyeglasses and your towering tallness, your unruly red hair, a stray curl unfurling as you used your ruler to make every line perfectly straight. I remember your notepads filled with detailed sketches, all of them fish. You carried your marbled Barclay tomes under your arm and pushed the bridge of your eyeglass frames up with your middle finger as you spoke. Your skin pale as milk, your cheeks flushed pink like an old fisherman's when the nuns called on you. But you were no fisherman. Your eyebrows auburn, arched, in intelligent, interested, incessant, inquisitive innocence. We went to different high schools, you and I, no reason to stay in touch. Years later, when they told me what had become of you at only 16, how your pallid body, still topped with a shock of red, was found silent and still at the end of a rope. I felt the line snap between us, the pang of loss, never really knowing what caves and caverns you dwelt in. So I wrote this poem when a friend told me about a boy that we went to grammar school with. I was asking whatever became of him. And she said, oh, didn't you know he hanged himself in high school? And I was just so shocked at hearing that. And this poem just kind of came out of that shock and a sense of grief that maybe I hadn't earned because we weren't close friends, Thomas and I, but we did talk. And I think in today's atmosphere, he might have been recognized as being someone that was on the spectrum. But I just imagine that his high school, his time in high school, his short time in high school was probably very, very dark for him. And it just made me wonder about his life and the possibilities for a future that never happened. My friend asked me how I remembered so much about him, but it just came back to me very, very vividly. I can see his face so clearly, that young boy face. I could see his cheeks flushing with red. And I remember being so impressed by these fish because they were incredibly detailed. And he also had detailed notes. His handwriting was very, very precise. It was actually printing, all printing. And I think all of these are kind of like mosaic pieces that come together to create a bigger picture. But I also pictured a fish on the end of a line, and we don't really talk about a fish hanging, more that it's caught somehow. And I think that Thomas, for him, to be silent and still at the end of a rope instead of hanging from it, I think it kind of evokes the memory of, or the image of a fish. That's why in the following line, when I say that I felt a line snap between us, it's like an amputation, like you have no future possibility of a better life for him or a better relationship for us. I think storytelling helps us process grief because you really have to put yourself in that situation again. You have to put yourself back into the atmosphere in which everything was happening. And it's like an understanding of grief from the inside out rather than grieving it from the outside. It's a way in, an empathetic way in to make a connection with that person who's no longer here, but his memory is. Writing the poem definitely helped me come to terms with his death in a different way than just thinking about it or speaking about it even, because when you write, you conjure up these images or they come to you. And for example, the image of the not knowing what caves and caverns he dwelt in, I think we all have a mysterious side of us, and it's a part of us that we don't often let other people into. And with Thomas, I think that that's, you know, some of us, we have those caves and caverns in our lives, but we lived out our lives outside of them. Whereas with Thomas, I think he lived his life inside of them. And it would have, the onus would have been on us, his classmates or his friends, to kind of follow him in there. And I think, you know, in grammar school, that's a little scary because kids don't want to be associated with, sadly, with hanging out with the weird kid or being a friend with that one kid who just seems so different. And I think to extend the metaphor a little further, it's those caves and caverns that we keep in our heart. And we hold our regrets there and our guilt there and our shame and all other things that maybe we wish we could have been better at the time.